And welcome you all in T3P Technology to the Point. In this particular video, we will talk about the content related to AZ-900 exam, that is for Azure Fundamentals. So this is the video prepared in a way that if you are new to cloud computing or you are using or planning a Microsoft Azure certification first time, then this video gonna help you too much. What are the exam topics about this particular certification? So earlier there were 6 modules, now there are only 3 modules. They consolidated, there are not much changes, just few services were there, which is out of scope now, and they just realigned the sections, they consolidated, and now there are only 3 sections. First section is fully about the concept, either it is related to Microsoft Azure or cloud computing. Next is about the Azure architecture, how it is globally spread, like geography, region pairs, and availability zones, regions, how they are connected, and the core services. So this module is very important because it carries around 35 to 40% of your exam. And here we will talk about all the services related to compute, storage, network. Those are the core services. Then we have some additional services like databases, we have IAM services related to the security, and we have some advanced services like artificial intelligence and machine learning. Let's move to the third section, that is about the Azure management, how Azure we can Azure manage our infrastructure in Azure through the subscriptions, through the management groups, and there are some services related to the security compliance and all that. All things will be covered on the third section. So, guys, let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, is there any default spending limit we are having when it comes to the spending limit for the Azure free account? Here, we are especially talking about the free account. So, the option we are having, yes or no. So, for this question, let me tell you, whenever you create free account, Azure free account, you will get 200 US dollar. That is only valid for first 30 days. So, yes, we are having the spending limit for the Azure free account. There are few services available for always free. There are around 40 plus services available. Just check the Azure free account. But for this question, we will go with option yes. This is our right answer. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, a company has just set up an Azure subscription. The company is planning on creating several resource groups. By creating additional resource group, would the company incur any additional cost? So the option we are having, yes or no. As you know that resource groups are only for the management purpose, and it is helping us to separate our resources for different types of. If we are planning to keep network resources together, then we can create one resource group for that one. If we want to create for one another resource group for compute, then we can do it. It is just for logical separation. It's also the thing is, in Azure there is no cost associated with it. So in this case, we will go with no for our answer. So this is our right choice for this question. Let's talk about next question now. Let's see what they are asking in this question. You are planning on creating an Azure free account. Which two of the following options are correct when it comes to the Azure free account? So the thing is, as they always like Azure or any other cloud platform, they always in the foundation course or the certification or fundamental certification, they always talk about the pricing and the features what they are offering to you, right? So you can get more questions on this section. That's why I covered this question. So in this question, the option we are having, you get free access to all the services for 12 months. As we know that we get only 200 credit for 30 days. So all the services for 12 months is not free. So it's not correct. You get 200 USD worth of credit that you can spend during the first 30 days of sign up. Yes, that is correct. Next is after the 30 days period of USD 200 worth of credit is over, you need to convert to a pay as you go account. Yes, if you want to continue with the services which you want have started or want to continue with your account, you need to convert it to pay as you go account. So this is option seems correct to me. And the last option we are having, you only need to have a valid mobile number to sign up for your account. That is not the actual thing. So the thing is, but you should have the valid credit card to create the accounts, right? So this is not correct. So what are the two options we will go with? We will go with option 2 and option 3. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking General Data Protection Regulation, that is known as GDPR, defines data protection and privacy rules. The option we are having true or false. So the thing is, let's understand what exactly the GDPR is. Actually, GDPR gives rise to the people to manage personal data which is collected by their organization. Okay, so there are many points need to be considered. You just need to go through the GDPR in you will get in on Microsoft site as well, or in general also. So what are those points actually? Those points are like who is your data controller, what data security processes may you have to perform while you are collecting the data. So these are the guidelines, or we can say the compliance that need to be followed by the organization while they are collecting the data. So the thing is, so it defines the data protection and privacy rules. Yes, it defines. So we will go with the option two here. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking it also based on GDPR, that GDPR apply to companies that offer goods or services to individuals in the European Union. The option we are having true or false. So the thing is, GDPR actually introduced some new rules for the organization. Either your organization residing in working or functioning from the European region or outside Europe. It no matter where you or your enterprise are located, but it introduced new rules for the organization that offers goods and services to the people in the European region, or that collect or analyze data for EU, that is European Union residents. They have to follow this one, GDPR compliance. So the thing is, yes, it is applied. So we will go with the true for this question as well. As GDPR is the, we have seen many new questions related to this in latest exam. So it's better just go through that particular article. It is just one page. If you need, just reach me. I will share the link for that one, or you can get it from the Microsoft website. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, Azure can be used to build a general data protection regulation, that is GDPR compliant infrastructure. True or false? That directly means that do Azure follow GDPR compliance or not? Yes, that is true. That Azure also follow GDPR, and we can create the infrastructure that is GDPR compliance. So we will go with the true for this question. So this type of question, yes or no or true or false, you will get in a bulk. It's not like individual question. You will get it most of the time. It will come like three questions together in a single question. So just so focus more on these questions, so you get more marks. Let's see the next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, a company wants to start using Azure. They want to have a declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resources types, such as role assignments and policy assignment. And what is the solution they are giving? It's a kind of a scenario. And the solution is they decide to use Azure Blueprints for that. Would this fulfill the requirement? Yes, that is very much true. In terms of Azure Blueprints, in this scenario, what they are asking, actually Azure Blueprints helps our developer to build and make the environment ready as quickly as possible. And also it's a declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resource types. So in this question, we will go for yes. And that is right choice for our this question. Let's talk about next question now. So let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, company want to start using Azure. They want to have a declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resources types, such as role assignments and policy assignment. The solution they are giving, they decide to use Azure Information Protection. Would this fulfill the requirement? The option we are having, yes or no. To understand this question, we need to understand the Azure Information Protection. What exactly it is? It is actually a cloud-based solution which helps the organization to classify and protect their documents and email. How it classify the documents, like if you are in any organization, you are receiving mails, right, regularly. So they classify your emails if it is for the general purpose or it is for the confidential. So on the basis of classification like C1, C2, C4, 3, C4, we have many kind of classification. It's all depend on the organization how they classify those documents and emails. So that is used for protection of your documents and the emails. But in this question, they are asking that they want to have a declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resources types, such as role assignment and policy assignment. That is the task of Azure Blueprint. So in this question, they decide to use Azure Information Protection. So that's not correct. So what we will go? We will go for no for this question. Let's talk about next question now. This is the same scenario based question. Let's understand what they are asking. A company wants to start using Azure. They want to have a declarative way to orchestrate the deployment of various resource types such as role assignment and policy assignment. Solution they are giving, they decide to use Azure AD, Privileged Identity Manager management. Would this fulfill the requirement? So again, we will go for no. Let's understand what exactly this service do. This service is like Azure AD PIM service. PIM is for Privileged Identity Management Service. Privileged identities are administrator account, like we have many admin account or the service account. Those comes under privileged account. So the thing is that this service is normally to manage these administrator or the service account. That purpose we use Azure AD PIM service, not for the declarative way of orchestrate the deployment of various resources. So we will go with no for this question. I hope you find it helpful. Let's see the next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking a company has just deployed a set of Azure virtual machines. They want their IT administrative team to get alerts whenever the CPU of the virtual machines goes beyond a certain threshold, whatever their organization set it. Which of the following service could be used for this purpose? The option we are having Azure Advisor, Azure Security Center, Azure Monitor, and Azure AD. So let's understand before answering this question what these services do. If we will talk about Azure Advisor, it's like advising us, or we can say it's suggesting us where we can improve the efficiency of our infrastructure in Azure. So this is just a suggestion service. It don't monitor. Okay, so it will not send any alerts. So in this one, this is wrong. And if we will talk about the Azure Security Center, it is actually help us to manage the security of our resources, and it fulfill three vital role in our infrastructure. How it continuously check our resources if there is any security threats or not. If it is any threat, then it will secure that threat. That is the second role. And third thing, it defend. That means it detect and resolve those threats, so it will help us to secure our environment, but it don't send any alert like for the CPU goes beyond the threshold. So it is not correct. Azure Monitor, yes, that is the correct service that help us to monitor the CPU usage and send us alert. Azure, if we will talk about Azure AD, it's a identity provider for our cloud solution. So this is how it works. These four services work. So this is not correct. And our correct answer for this question is Azure Monitor. Let's talk about next question now. So guys, let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking we need to match the services with the service categories. As we know, there are main category like database, network, computing, big data. These are the categories we are having in Azure. So these are the services given like Azure Function, Azure Virtual Network, Azure Cosmos DB, Azure Synapse Analytics. So these services belongs to which category we need to identify in this question. So let's talk about one by one. First is Azure Function, as it is serverless computing service, so it will belong to compute. Next, we have Azure Virtual Network. So this is for logically separate our infrastructure. So it will belongs to networking. Cosmos DB, that is Cosmos database. So it belongs to database service. And in the last, we have Azure Synapse Analytics. So this is the service which belongs to big data, as we are left only one option here. So this is how we need to understand these services. So we need to go through all the services and we need to remember which service comes to which category. So you can also get some questions, then you can easily handle those questions in your exam. So let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking which feature ensure your application remains online if a high impact maintenance event is required or if there is any hardware failure occur. So the option we are having region, geographies, availability zone, availability set. So to understand this question, we need to understand about what exactly these four features are. If you talk about region, region is actually a geographical area on the planet that contains at least one, or we can say or we can have multiple data centers within the region. So that is talking about the region. Next, we have geographies. Geographies. So geographies actually contains two or more regions that preserves data residency and the compliance boundary. That comes under geography. If we will talk about the availability zone are actually a physically separate location within a region with their own power, cooling, and networking resources. So this is how we define the availability zones. If we'll talk about the availability set, that actually ensures our application remains online if a high impact maintenance event is required or if there is any hardware failure. So in this question, they are asking about this one. So for this question, our answer will be availability set. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking what is the physical separate locations with their own power, cooling, and networking in Azure? So the option we have region, we have geographies, availability zones, and availability set. As we already discussed this thing, that availability zones are the physical separate locations with their own power, cooling, and networking in Azure. So for this question, our answer will be availability zone. Let's talk about Let's talk about next question. In this question, they are asking what is the geographical area on the planet containing at least one, but potential multiple data centers. That means here we are talking about regions. So in the option we are having region, geographies, availability zones, and availability sets. So for this one, we will go with. So for this question, we will go for the region here. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking what is the typically containing two or more regions that preserve data residency and compliance boundary. The option we are having region, geographies, availability zone, and availability set. So the thing is for this question, we will go with geographies because geographies typically containing two or more regions that preserve data residency and compliance boundaries. So for this question, our answer will be geographies. So let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking which Azure service would you use to monitor threats in your Azure environment by using sensors. So the option we are having Azure Monitor, Azure Security Center, Azure AD Identity Protection, Azure Advanced Threat Protection. So before understanding this question, we need to understand these services, right? So what is actually the Azure Monitor is? Azure Monitor is the service which monitor our resources and that help us to set alerts whenever we find any threshold value message. Next, we have Azure Security Center. Azure Security Center is the service which helps us to secure our environment, either it is on premises or Azure. So this is not for the monitoring threats. When we are talking about the Azure AD identity protection, it is mainly protecting our identities like our username, accounts, and all. And it's enforced, or we can say we use multi-factor authentication as well under AD identity protection. So this is not the service which monitor threat. In the last, we have Azure Advanced Threat Protection. Yes, that is the right choice for this question. And what exactly it is? It uses a sensor to monitor threats, and we use for the purpose Azure Advanced Threat Protection. In short, we know as Azure ATP. Azure ATP is a cloud-based security solution that leverages our on-premises Active Directory signals to identify, detect, and investigate advanced threat. What type of threat it can be? It can be your compromised identities or the malicious action which is happen or occur in our organization. So for this question, we will go with Azure ATP. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking which Azure service would you use to enforce Azure MFA based on a condition. The option we are having Azure Monitor, Azure Security Center, Azure AD Identity Protection, Azure ATP. As we already discussed these services earlier, and what exactly Azure Monitor? It monitors the resources and send alerts. Azure Security Center secure our environment, and Azure Identity AD Identity Protection. It helps us to protect our identity with the help of multi-factor authentication that is asked in this question. So we will go with this option here. This is our right choice for this question. And in the last, Azure ATP that is used for threat protection for our environment. So for this question, we will go with Azure AD Identity Protection. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking you need to configure an Azure solution that is able to secure your websites from attacks and generate reports that contain details of attempted attacks. What should you include in your architecture? The option we are having Azure Firewall, Network Security Group, Azure Information Protection, DDoS Protection. As you already know that Azure Firewall is to restrict the inbound traffic. So this is not the right choice for this question when we are talking about the secure your website from attacks and generate reports. Azure a Network Security Group, that is also not correct here. If we will talk about the Azure Information Protection, it is used. This service is mainly used to protect our emails or documents from the unauthorized access. So this is not the service here. The correct answer for this question will be DDoS Protection. DDoS stands for Distributed Denial of Service. What exactly it is? DDoS is a type of attack that tries to exhaust our application resources. That means that the malicious, the person, unauthorized person, sent that many requests that our server gets hung and our application is not able to respond to the legitimate query. So in this way, it will not work at all. So so for this one, what we will do, we will use DDoS protection. So actually, Azure has two DDoS service offerings that provide protection from the network attack. What exactly are those? One, we have the basic one, DDoS basic. Next, we have the standard one. So the thing is, DDoS basic protection is integrated with the Azure platform by default, and there is no charge for it, no cost involved for this one. Okay, when we will go with the standard, we need to pay something for that one. So this is how we can solve this question. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking the process of verifying a user's credential is known as, the option we are having, authorization, authentication, federation, or checking process. So the thing is, if we want to validate the credential of anyone, that comes under authentication. When we are talking about the authorization, it checks the permission that if any user have the access to that resource or not. And federation is something with the same user ID we can access others environment. And the last option we are having check-in process, that I do not see in Azure what exactly it is. So, but I'm sure that the process of verifying a user's credential is known as authentication. So we will go with authentication for this question. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking, Conceptual manager asked the team to implement continuous deployment process for their application. The team decided to use Azure DevOps for this purpose. But does this service meet their needs? We need to tell in yes or no. So the thing is, before answering this question, we need to understand what exactly this Azure DevOps service is. Actually, Azure DevOps comes with a pipeline feature that allows developer to create CI/CD pipeline, that is CI/CD pipeline, that is continuous integration and continuous deployment for their application easily. So here they are continuous deployment they are talking about. So yes, this is the correct service. So the team can use it. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking that control manager asked the team to implement continuous deployment process for their application. So the team decided to use Azure Dev Test Last service. Does this meet their need? Actually, it's not, as we already discussed that it is fulfilled by Azure DevOps service. So what exactly this Azure DevTest Labs is? Azure DevTest Labs service is used to provide sandbox environment to developers and testers, but it does not deliver any feature for building CI/CD pipeline. So it will not work in this case. So here we will go with no option for this question. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking that consumer company wants to build highly secure IoT application with the help of Azure. What service should they look at first? What they are looking for? They are looking to build highly secure IoT application with the help of Azure. So the option we are having, IoT Central, Azure Sphere, IoT Hub. See, IoT Hub is a bidirectional service which helps us to communicate between IoT devices and the IoT application. So it is not for securing highly secure IoT application, so it will not work, and it's a PaaS solution, platform as a service. And when we are talking about the IoT central service, it is managed service and it comes under SaaS, and it helps us to build enterprise level solutions, but it will not help us to secure. So we will not go for this one also. If we will talk about Azure Sphere delivers components for building secure end-to-end IoT solution. So E2E IoT solution that is also secure. So this is what they are looking for this question. So we will go with Azure Sphere for this question. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking, when you try to create multiple Azure virtual machines, you receive a message that you must increase your Azure subscription limit. What should you do to increase the limit? As you know that most of the time we set a quota limit, and there are some default quota limits as well. Did that actually help us uh, to control the spending on our resources? So it will help us to control our Azure cost. So what we do whenever we need to increase the cost, increase the limit, we need to create a new support request for this one. So create a service health alert is not work here. Upgrade your support plan will also not. Modify an Azure policy will also not work here. So our answer for this question will be, whenever we need to increase the limit, we need to create a new support request for that paper. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, they are asking, your company is preparing to migrate its public website to Azure. As a next step, the company must plan to. What exactly they need to do? They need to go with a pay monthly usage cost. They need to deploy a VPN, pay extra to transfer all the website data to Azure, reduce the number of connection to the website. So for this question, we will go with, they need to pay monthly usage cost whenever they need to migrate their public website to Azure. Why they need to do this one? Because Azure uses pay as you go model, so that's why they need to pay for this purpose. If you want to know more about it, you need to go with the pricing FAQs available on Microsoft Azure website. You will understand more about it. Let's talk about next question now. In this question, we are asking which feature collects all the logs from various resources into a central dashboard where you can run queries, view graphs, and create alert on certain event. Here, mainly the keywords we are having, we need to run the query and we need to collect all the logs. So the option we are having, Azure Security Center, as we know, this is the service which is help us to secure our environment. Event Hub is a real-time data ingestion service that's simple, trusted, and scalable, and it streams millions of events per second. So this is not the service which collects the logs and we can run queries on top of that. Azure Portal Dashboard, this is also not that service because in the last it is mentioned that we need to create alerts as well. So this is what done by the Azure Monitor service. It monitor our resources and whenever we meet the threshold, it sends us alert for that purpose. So for this question, we will go with Azure Monitor.
Just join and you need to collect and automatically analyze security events from Azure Active Directory. What should you use? Azure Sentinel, Azure Synapse Analytics, Azure AD Connect, Azure Keyboard. As we already know, it's talking about the events from the Azure AD, that is Microsoft Cloud AD. So it is used by Azure Sentinel. So this is the service we will use to collect and automatically analyze security events. So our answer is Azure Sentinel. Next question is, a company wants to quickly manage its individual IoT devices by using a web-based user interface. The option we are having, IoT Central, Azure Sphere, IoT Hub, Azure Sentinel. What they are asking, company wants to quickly manage its individual IoT devices by using web-based user interface. So it's talking about the Internet of Things devices. So let's see what we are having. IoT Central, IoT Azure Sphere, IoT Hub, Azure Sentinel. So first thing, we will talk about IoT Central. What is IoT Central? It quickly creates a web-based management portal to enable reporting and communication with IoT devices. That is what it is asking in the question. So for this question, our answer is this one. But let's understand what are these options also. If we will talk about the Azure Sphere, it's a hardware, okay, with an OS. It is having an operating system installed, which has built-in communication and security feature for internet connected devices, but it does not provide a graphical user interface for device management. So it's like a built-in communication and security feature for internet connected devices, that is IoT. But in this question, they are not talking about this thing. If we will talk about the IoT Hub, that allow bi-directional communication between IoT application and the devices. Suppose our application is installed or configured in cloud, and we have the smart devices at our home, right, like Alexa and other devices we are having. So this is, it helps us to provide bi-directional connections. So it's allow bi-directional communication between this application which is configured in Azure cloud and the smart devices what we are having at our home or in the market. Last thing, Azure Sentinel, we have already seen what exactly it is, or we can say source solution. But in this question, they are asking quickly manage its individual IoT devices by using web-based user interface. So we have IoT Central for this one. Let's talk about next question. Which Azure service can you use as a security information and event management solution? So we have already seen what is that. That is Azure Sentinel. The option we are having, Azure Analysis Services, Azure Sentinel, Azure Cognitive Services, Azure Information Protection. So here our answer is Azure Sentinel. Let's talk about next question. Which is the easiest way for an organization to combine security data from all of its monitoring tools into a single report that it can take action on? The option we are having, build a custom tool that collects security data and display a report through a web application, collect security data in Azure Sentinel, and the last, look through each security log daily and email a summary to your team. So for this one, our correct answer is collect security data in Azure Sentinel. As we have already seen when I described it, it's provided bird eye view to get all the information in a single view, we can say, or it collects security data in Azure Sentinel. That is what they are saying, monitoring tool into a single report. So our answer is this one. Which Azure service should you use to store certificates? Azure Security Center, Azure Storage Account, Azure Keyboard, Azure Information Protection. So here they are talking about you to use store certificates. That means for this, the correct answer is Azure keyword, because it is used to store for various type of sensitive information that includes your password, application password, or the certificate. Also, it can be used to securely store and tightly control access to the tokens, passwords, certificates, APIs, keys, and other security. That means here, if we use Azure keyword, we no need to keep our application's password in a plain text files. So we can use Azure keyword for this one. Let's see the next question. Identify which statement are true or false. Mark yes if it is true, no for false. So we have some statements here, so you will see the question where you need to say just yes, no, yes, kind of. So let's see the first statement. Azure Security Center can monitor Azure resources and on-premises resources. So that is yes. All Azure Security Center features are free. That is no, because only two features are free. What are those two features? First is continuous assessment and security recommendation. Second is Azure Secure Score that helps to analyze your environment. Next statement, from Azure Security Center, you can download a regulatory compliance report. Yes, we can download it. Let's talk about next question. Which Azure service helps you to enable just-in-time access? The option we are having: Azure Vision, Azure Firewall, Azure Front Door, Azure Security Center. So for this one, our answer is Azure Security Center. This is one of the feature which enables JIT access, that is just-in-time access. So which allow you to lock down inbound traffic. That means it restricts the inbound traffic, so hackers can't connect to your machine, but you will have the way to connect your machine securely with the help of Azure Security Center. So this reduces the exposure to attacks while providing easy access when we need it. So whenever we talk about which service will be used to enable JIT access, that is Azure Security Center. I got confused earlier. I was thinking it is for Azure Vision, but in Azure it is Azure Security Center, but in other cloud I read that is Vision, but let's forget that thing. But for this one, JIT access, Azure Security Center. Let's talk about next question. Your company plans to automate the deployment of server to Azure. Your manager is concerned that you may expose administrative credentials during the deployment. You need to recommend an Azure solution that encrypts the administrative credential during the deployment. What should you include in the recommendation? The option we are having: Azure Keyword, Azure Information Protection, Azure Security Center, Azure Multi-Factor Authentication. So what we will use here? We will use Azure Keyword because we want to store administrative credentials during the deployment. That means these are the credentials which is used by application to perform their services. So for that one, we have Azure Keyword, which is a secure store for storage various type of sensitive information which is asked in the question. So there is no need to store the administrative credentials as a plain text in the deployment script. So here we will use Azure Keyword. Let's talk about next question. Which service can help you to view your company's compliance report? Azure Advisor, Azure Analysis Service, Azure Monitor, Azure Security Center. So we have already seen it. Which service we will use for this one? This is Azure Security Center. This question can come in a drop-down list, so you will see these all options in a drop-down. You need to select out of them. But you need to remember, whenever they are talking about the company's compliance report, we need to select Azure Security Center for this one. Let's talk about next question. This is the same question they are asking in different way. So I observed so many questions over the internet. I found the similar question with different types of wording. So what should you use to evaluate whether your company's Azure environment meets the regulatory requirement? Azure Service Health, Azure Knowledge Center, Azure Security Center, Azure Advisor. So for this one, it is Azure Security Center because it helps us to track and manage compliance and governance over the time. So let's talk about next question now. You need to evaluate whether your company's Azure environment meets regulatory requirement. What should you use in your investigation? The Knowledge Center website, the Advisor Blade from the Azure portal, Compliance Manager from Security Trust portal, the Security Center Blade from Azure portal. So for this one, the correct answer is we will use Azure Security Center Blade from Azure portal. So sometimes they can ask how you will access the Security Center. So we will use it from the Azure portal. So there can be anything, they can ask anything with this for the same question, different wording. Let's see the next question. To evaluate whether Azure meets your company's regulatory requirement, what should you use? Raise a support ticket, use Azure Advisor Hub, use Compliance Manager from Security Trust Portal, use Security Center. So again, Our answer is Azure Security Center. See, they're asking with the different options to just confuse you. Just you need to remember whenever they are talking about the complex, you need to select Azure Security Center.
So let's start with the learning part. So first we have the cloud computing. In the short, if we will say what exactly the cloud computing is, cloud computing is the delivery of computing services over the internet. What are these computing services? These computing services can be anything like compute, storage, database, networking, and in the cloud, who will take care of the physical hardware and who will take care of the hardware up to date? It is the responsibility of the cloud provider. In this case, our Azure is the cloud provider, so it is the responsibility of the Azure. So what are the benefits we have with the cloud computing? It is cost effective, scalable, elastic, reliable, global, or secure. If we talk about the characteristics of the cloud computing, it is on-demand self-service, it is broad network access, means it can be accessible from anywhere, resource pooling, it may rapid elasticity, major services. So we just need to pay what we consume. So we have three deployment model, that is public, private, hybrid. So Azure is the example of public cloud. When your organization having your own cloud, that will be known as a private cloud. In some cases, it can be possible that some of the component of your organization belongs to you. You want to keep with yourself, means your organization side, means your on premises, or with your company, and a few components can be on Azure. So these kind of cloud will be known as a hybrid cloud, or it might be possible that you want to take services from multiple clouds, so that will also known as a hybrid cloud. So how we choose these deployment model? It's all depend on your budget, security, scalability, and maintenance. Then we have the service models. These are the three: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. If we talk about the control wise from the user's customer side, then infrastructure as a service have more control on your side, and you will be responsible for many of the components there. If we talk about platform as a service, it will provide you the environment where you can develop your applications. Mainly, it will be used for that one. Then we have the software as a service. It's based on licenses, like Gmail is the one of the example for that one. Office 365 is also software as a service. If we see all together these service models, so if you see, these are the components which come into picture when we plan to deploy our infrastructure, or we can say plan to deploy our application. So how it works? So we have the data center, or we can say the physical building. Then we have the networking inside that building or the data center. Then we have the servers in the rack in the data center. Then on those servers we will install the operating system. On the operating system we deploy our tools, database, whatever tools we want. With the help of those tools we will develop the application. The application will be hosted on those servers. So how it works? But when we talk about the infrastructure as a service, if you see from right to left, data center, networking part, and the server part will come into IaaS. If we talk about platform as a service, then operating system and development tools also managed by the cloud provider, and it will come as a platform as a service, because they are providing you the platform where you can write your own code and prepare your application and host it in the cloud. Then we have the software as a service, where you just need to buy the licenses either for yourself or for your organization. When you go with the bulk, then definitely you will get the huge discount from the cloud provider. How these service model works in terms of security? In any cloud provider, it is having shared security model. They follow shared security model. And if let me tell one thing: if you are managing cloud on in your organization itself, you are not going with the public cloud, then from storage to data, means storage, networking, compute, virtual machines, operating system, runtime environment, that is the development environment, and the application data, everything you need to manage in terms of security wise. You need to handle, and you need to be compliant for everything. So you need the expert, you require deep technical skills for that one. But when you go with the cloud, and you want to use public cloud, then these responsibilities are shared with the cloud provider as well. So in infrastructure as a service, from storage to compute will be managed by cloud provider, and from virtual machine to data you need to manage. Similarly, in the platform as a service, from storage to runtime, cloud provider need to manage, and you need to manage only the application and its data. When we talk about software as a service, till application, cloud provider is responsible for the security wise, and you need to manage, you need to handle security of the cloud and the access in the sense who will be able to access those application with your account.
Then we have the management responsibilities under these service model. So if we talk about on-prem, you need to handle everything like security model. When we go with the infrastructure as a service, from networking to virtualization, cloud provider will manage, and you need to manage from OS to applications. That means the patching part also you need to take care. Patching in the sense updating your security patches that we receive from the vendor. When we go with the platform as a service, till runtime, cloud provider need to take care, and you just need to take care about the data and the application. In the software as a service, similarly, till application, cloud provider will take care. You just need to take care how you will access it, and within your account, how the data will be managed. Next, we have the Azure services. This is the slide which I got it from the Azure side. You can also go through it. The URL is already mentioned. These are the main services which is provided by Azure. Let me tell you the important one which will help us to for this exam. Not only for this exam, those are the common services we regularly use it in our organization as well for our day-to-day work. Out of these are the first we have the compute, virtual machines, containers. These comes under compute. Then we have the storage where our data is stored. Then we have the networking, virtual private network, load balancer, DNS, express route, traffic manager. These comes into network. We will go through little bit all these services which is required for this exam in coming slide. Then we have the analytics and IoT tools, intelligence, data like database tools. We have here. Then we have the developer services, application platform, compute services. So many things we have in this whole picture. So it will give you the brief idea that okay, first at least you go through these all once. So when you go appear for the exam, you will not see this thing like this term is new for you and you are not aware about that. So it will help you from which category it belongs to. So just go through them. Let's talk about the important computing services. As I mentioned, virtual machine skill sets that is used for scaling the virtual machines or your hosted application or hosted virtual machine. Azure Kubernetes services that is used for managing the cluster for containerized application. Then we have Azure Service Fabric that is the distributed system platform, and it runs either on Azure or your on-premises environment. Then we have the Azure Batch service that is managed service for parallel and high performance computing application. Next, we have Azure Container Instance. These are the instance which is not dependent on the server. Means you no need to require the servers or virtual machine to use them. Just you can get the container instance and run your containerized application top of that. Then we have the Azure function that is the event driven, or we can say logic driven technology, or it is serverless computing service that is nowadays very much useful, and we will get some question from here as well. Here we have the networking services. Those are the important one. And let me tell you, first is Azure Virtual Network, Load Balancer, Application Gateway, VPN Gateway, Azure DNS. Then we have Azure Content Delivery Network, that is the CDN. So I received one question from this, like, and what exactly it do? It delivers high bandwidth content to customers globally. Then we have Azure DDoS, that is denial death of service protection. It protects Azure hosted application from DDoS attacks. Then we have the traffic manager. There is a difference between load balancer and traffic manager. Load balancer works within the region, and traffic manager helps you to distribute traffic or redirect traffic in other regions as well. Azure Express Route, it provides the dedicated connection between your on-premises environment to cloud. Then we have Azure Network Watcher, Azure Firewall. Oh yeah, Azure Firewall is also an important service. Implements high security, high availability firewall with unlimited scalability. Then we have Azure Virtual WAN, that is not much important. So these are the services which I got it from the Azure training site. That is the training of 9 hours, but I combined it together and made a useful content for you for this exam. Next, we have the storage services. In the storage service, we have four services main, that is blob storage, file storage, queue storage, table storage. If we talk about blob storage service for very large objects such as video files, bitmaps and all. If we talk about file storage, file shares, or it behaves like a file server. Then we have the queue storage that is used for mainly for messaging service, because its data is stored for queuing and reliable delivery message between the application. Then we have Azure Table Storage. It is NoSQL store that hosts unstructured data independent of any schema. And these all services commonly provide these characteristics. These all are durable, secure, scalable, managed, and accessible from anywhere in the world. Next, we have database services. In the database services, we have Azure Cosmos DB. I got one question from this one also. It is a globally distributed database that support non-SQL option. Then we have Azure SQL database, Azure database for MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server for VM, and the important service here is Azure Synapse Analytics. It is fully managed data warehouse with integral security at every level. So just go through these services once, twice, thrice. Just try to understand them. So it will help you if you get any question from, because this is the fundamental certification, right? You will get most of the question on the basis of concepts. After those services, we have few more like web services. In the web services, we have the Azure App Service, Azure Notification Hubs, Azure API Management, Cognitive Search, and web app feature of Azure App Service, and Signal R service. In the Notification Hub service, used for sending notification to any platform. Then we have Cognitive Search. It is fully managed search as a service. It will be used. Then we have Azure App Service, that is quickly create powerful cloud-based application. After web services, we have artificial intelligence service. In this, we have two. One is Azure Machine Learning Service, Azure Machine Learning Studio. Mainly, if you just try to understand how machine learning works, it works from the previous access taken. So it helps us to analyze what we got it previously when we run some application, and how on the basis of predicts means on the basis of past experience we target for the future consumption and all. It helps in that way. When we will go through the question, it will be more clear to you. Then we have IoT services, IoT Central, Azure IoT Hub, IoT Edge. So in this, IoT Hub is the important one, messaging hub that provides secure communication between and monitoring of millions of IoT devices. How these IoT devices works and what exactly are these? Nowadays, if you know that we are having smart devices, right? The television, the bulb, and the Alexa. These are the smart devices. How it works? It works on the basis of sensor, and these are the example of IoT devices. Then we have big data service. In the big data also we have the inside that is the important one. What exactly it do? It process massive amount of data with managed clusters of Hadoop cluster in the cloud. Then we have DevOps services. In the DevOps services, we have Azure Dev Test Labs. So what exactly this Azure Dev Test Labs do? It quickly create on-demand Windows or Linux environment for you. So it will be easy for you to do testing when we want to scale or and all. And we will have some questions on this as well. Now let's understand what exactly the region and availability domains are. The region is a geographical area on the planet that consists one or more availability domains. And what exactly the availability domain, that is the term from the OCI in Azure. Here we know as a availability zone. What exactly are these? Availability zones are physically separate data center within an Azure region, and one region mostly have three ADs in there. Means availability zones in that one. Each availability zone is made up of one or more data center equipped with independent power, cooling, and networking. So the thing is, when we want to save our infrastructure, if the data center get fails or fail down, right? So what we will use? We will use more than one availability zone for that one. It also provides the isolated boundary for your region. So let's talk about little bit about serverless computing in Azure. And Azure's serverless computing is implemented in two ways. One is Azure Function, where you just need to execute the code with the any most of the modern language is supported by Azure Function. Then we have the Azure Logic apps. Those works on the mm, workflow model, right, which are designed in a web-based designer and can execute logic triggered by Azure services without writing any code. So here the first action is taken, then what action need to be taken. So we just need to define those things in the blocks, and those logics will be implemented and run. Here we will not bother about the underlying hardware. That's why this technology is known as a serverless technology. We have already gone through the storage services, but these are few more important one where we have the more detailed information, like Azure Blob Storage. Azure Blob Storage is unstructured, meaning that there are no restriction on the kind of data it can hold. Azure Blob Storage lets us stream large video and all, as it is mentioned. It is used for large video, large data size. It can hold and we can stream that video. Means we can see those videos live in the way like YouTube works, right? Then we have Azure Data Lake Service storage. The data lake storage features allow you to perform analytics on your data usage and prepare reports out of that. So data lake is a large repository that stores both structured and unstructured data. What is the structured data and unstructured? Where we define the schema is known as a structured. If we don't define the schema, is known as a unstructured. Like anything, we can put it like video files, Word documents, and all. Then we have the storage. Disk storage provides disk for virtual machines, application, and other services to access and use when we need it. Now we have the important networking terms that we will get into the questions, and these are the useful terms we can say. So first we have the NSG, or we can say network security group. Network security group allows or deny inbound network traffic to your Azure resources. So when we will talk about restricting or filtering inbound and outbound traffic, then we will use this NSG. Then we have the VPN gateway. The VPN gateway enables, like, it can provide a secure connection between Azure virtual network and your on-premises network through the internet. Then we have the network latency. Latency refers to the time it takes for data to travel over the network. That means if my data is reaching to your server quickly, then we will say low latency. If and normally it is measured in millisecond. When we check the ping response, right, there is a time also mentioned in milliseconds. That shows the how quick we are getting is how much latency we have between two nodes or two services. So what is the difference between the load balancer and the traffic manager? As I already mentioned, that load balancer distribute traffic within the same region, uh, and traffic manager works at the DNS level and direct the request to the endpoint in a other region that is the closest to the your users. Next difference we have, like when load balancer detects that there is unresponsive virtual machine is there, then it direct me or redirect the traffic to other VMs in the pool. And traffic manager if they found any endpoint unresponsive, it redirect the traffic to the next closest from the end user. So both works in a similar way. The only difference is Azure load balancer works within the region and traffic manager helps to redirect the connection outside region as well. Now let's talk about the resources which help us to organizing the resources within the Azure. First we have the resource groups, then we have the resource log, and then we have the tags. So what exactly the resource group? Resource group is a logical container for resources. In that group we can add anything, either virtual machine, storage, database, service, whatever you want to add, you can make a group out of that. But one resource can't be group for multiple resource group. That is the restriction there. Then we have resource log. How it works? We have two kind of resource log. One is delete, one is read only. If we apply only the delete, then it will help us to accidentally deletion of any resources from our environment. If we have the read only, it will also allow it will only allow read activities to be performed on the resources. And where these logs can be implemented, these can be implemented on the level of subscription, resource group, or any individual resource. What are the tags? Tags are nothing, just to provide the name. When we create any resource, it's better to provide the name because it will help us to organize, it will help us to distinguish them. So what kind of resource it is and from which department it belongs to, it will help in that way. So in the end, when we want to analyze the cost, where exactly it is going high or where it is going low, these tags will help us. So these are the few factors that affect the cost, because so in Azure it's not like all the services are available at the same cost. So if we have different kind of resources, different type of resources, we need to pay differently as per the resource. Then we have different kind of services, so it also affect our cost. Then we have the location. In Oracle cloud infrastructure, we have the similar cost in all throughout the region. Means in different location also we have the same cost, so it is easy to predict there. But here we need to check in which region we want to host our application, from which location our user will access that application, the cost will vary accordingly. Then we have the Azure billing zones. Now means for each zone there is different cost defined. It's all depend on demand and supply basis. Here we have few important tools that is useful for this certification. We get questions from this. So first is Azure Advisor. It is a free tool which help us to provide recommendation on high availability, security, performance, operational excellence, and cost. How it works? It analyze your deployed services and look where it can be improved. So it to help us to reduce cost by eliminating provisioned servers or some circuits or some network. It help recommend us to buy reserved instances in place instead of going with a pay as you go, because reserved instances have very low cost there, because the reason is they are not utilized at all. So when there is no utilization, they reduce the cost dynamically, so we can use them for our environment. And also it will help us for as per our utilization right size, or it will help to recommend shut down those machines which are not in use. So it helps in many ways. So it's mainly used for improvement. That is our understanding. Then we have the Azure Cost Management. It is also another free Azure tool. It helps us to provide the insight where exactly our money is going. That means it will break down the cost, means the spending, our spending. Then we will, okay, our computing service is taking more money than the storage. Kind of means segregation it will provide. Then we have the TCO calculator. That is the total cost of ownership. If you are planning any migrations to cloud, as a designer or as an architect, you should understand what cost will be involved and how much it will cost me when I'm planning our infrastructure to cloud. So this tool will help us for that one.